you
sure.
probably can read people if they're lying or not,
Yes.
to a degree. Yeah. They're like, oh, it was my cousin you never met before. And
Right.
and you're like, oh, and you didn't happen to mention that they were in town? Like,
Oh, right.
you probably saw a future with that person. Maybe you wanted to marry that person. And now you're still keeping in touch.
I can't stop myself from feeling, but I can control my actions.
Cheating can be great in a lot of areas.
Got me feeling good today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jam Session number 9 with Jazz and
Montez.
Today we're going to be talking about trust issues, like certain what would you do situations, and also some advice.
You're going to find out when we
tips.
answer the questions.
Today we're doing a couple shout outs. Mine is going to go to Unshook Design and Clothing. It's a family-owned business, and they are all recyclable. Like, these are recycled materials put together, and each garment tells a story. Everything that they stand for is turning your struggles into strengths. So go check them out at Unshook on Instagram.
That's beautiful. I'm not necessarily giving a shout out to a specific company. Like the hoodie that I'm wearing is not actually sponsoring this podcast, but I'm wearing this hoodie because I am a huge advocate for the support of those on the spectrum. I even wrote a script to make them superheroes. Shout out to y'all.
All right. And with that, we'll get started with the first question. So, Montez, tell me, do you believe that trust should be given freely or earned over time, and why?
Yeah.
Yeah to which question?
Yeah to both. For me, I don't believe that anyone should bear the burden of somebody else's actions. So if I go into meeting a new person, I give them a level of trust. And this could be platonic or otherwise. Mm-hmm. I like to give people a level of trust above what most people or most of society would give. For me, it's to give them the opportunity to do something wrong, not to deem them as wrong before I even have a conversation with them.
That's
so
fair.
My level of trust is a little bit higher. I will be completely honest about that. But it does put me in a more vulnerable position to get hurt. I'm pretty tough when it comes to certain situations, so I think I'll be all right. But it also doesn't put me in a position, because I know people are going to say, oh, well, you can't just trust anybody. Obviously not. Am I going to live my life through fear? No. So the example that I typically give is like, I will leave a open bag of chips or a plate of food around someone that I've never met before and say, don't eat my food, I'll be right back. If they eat my food, I know that it's more about them than me. But I'm not going to leave my keys to my car and say, I'll be back in like 3 hours. Don't take my car anywhere. Some people that I've never met before. I will still trust them with something that's not going to be detrimental to my life. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's just it's a very basic example, but yeah. And then in the long term, with my experience, I will allow that trust to increase or decrease. So both of the answers for me is yes.
I was going to say this. Well, saying the same thing in a little bit of a different way, but I'm going to go based off this proverb that I've heard. It says, do not cast your pearls to swine. And I've had to learn that the hard way. So that meaning that the pearls of your heart are the things that are precious to you, like treasures of your heart. You don't just give them away to anybody, like to people that are going to misuse it, misplace it, misread it, whatever. So you choose wisely, right? Who you share those type of things with. But you were being a lot more literal with actual possessions and those kind of things. Yeah. So I'm just answering it in a different way.
I'm not sure if that means we would agree, though.
I think that what you said, that you give people a level of trust in the beginning, but then as far as how far that trust goes, they have to earn that trust over time, which are the pearls of your heart. You don't just give them away to anybody right up front. You have to see that they're worthy, or that they're trustworthy enough for you to share those.
All right, cool. Next question.
You know what? Yeah, we're going to go to the next. Okay. All right. This is a scenario question. So the text, I had an amazing time yesterday, flashes on your significant other's phone from a name of the opposite sex that you don't recognize. Do you ask about it or ignore it?
Oh, hell no. We're talking about it. We're definitely talking about it.
Okay.
Conversation is everything. Yeah. We're going to have the conversation. It's not going to be like, what the heck is this? That's not going to be aggressive, but it's going to be, hey, I seen this. What was it about?
Right.
But like, there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide. there is something to hide, then I will know by the way
that they answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you probably can read people if they're lying or not to a degree. Yeah. They're like, oh, it was my cousin you never met before. And they, you know, and you're like, oh, and you didn't happen to mention that they were in town? Like when things don't add up.
Right. It's my auntie's best friend's little cousin's college teammate. Like, oh, right. About that.
Right.
But no, we're definitely going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
That won't be a scream I swallow, because that could turn into more than just a small scream.
Yeah.
And that could be meaningful. Yeah.
I think the key here is how you present it. Instead of assuming and having assumptions and accusing someone like, oh, I saw that, and already have an assumption as to what you think that meant or what they may have done, you come in it very open-ended and very open-minded too. Like, oh, I saw this, and you present it as a question. And then, you get to see how they respond. And then from there, you'll know whether it's a problem that you should worry about or if it literally was just maybe a friend that you haven't met yet or you don't know about. So, are there any specific events or experiences that have caused you to develop trust issues?
Yeah.
And then share.
Oh.
You don't have to go into crazy detail. You kind of already did in some of the other ones, but you can just overview.
Like a specific time where I've developed trust issues. And we're going to talk about relationships. Like I just want to give a specific example. It gave me a little bit of trust issues when I was constantly being accused. And then it made me think that because I knew I wasn't doing anything, there had to be a reason that their imagination was going elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that I went there, but it did end up being true. And then in another case that has nothing to do with that very common, maybe this next thing is uncommon to me, because one of my exes, she thought it was okay because we had a distance relationship. She thought it was okay that she go on dates with other guys because she was lonely. And I was like, you highly underestimate my value as a man, distance or not. If the distance is too much, that means that we are not meant. So yeah, I thought it, and that could be like not crazy for some people, but for me,
with the forehead scratch. For me, definitely there are specific events and experiences. I think it's just finding out that one of my exes wasn't truthful and he had a whole double life. And not only was he,
life?
Yeah, he was in the military and it was long distance. So what I knew from his life was very like what I knew, you know, and then finding out that there was a whole nother person that I had never met before that he.
Oh, I thought you were about to say family, like he had kids. I mean, not to say anything against our armed forces, but a lot of their life is private. They do keep pretty good secrets.
Jinx, just kidding. Okay, well anyways, so yeah, that definitely caused and developed a little bit of trust issues for me.
For that relationship that did you keep going or
that was
so it's trust issues for the next relationship.
Yeah. And then when that person also didn't have a double life but just wasn't upfront, honest, truthful.
So that happened.
You know.
So it happened. And you ended the relationship. But the trust issues flowed into other relationships, what you're saying. Oh,
I think I was just a little bit more weary of fully just giving my trust without seeing if.
So yes or no? Later relationships? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I guess it did influence.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay, what are some ways that you actively work on maintaining trust in a relationship?
Transparency. Communication, folks. I got a mouthpiece on me. I have a mouthpiece. I will use my voice.
Yep. Open, honest communication, transparency.
Yes.
Accountability.
And it's not
just a big one, I think.
Yes. And, absolutely.
And consistency. Like being a man or a woman of your word. Like following through on the things you say you're going to do. Those are huge.
And understanding that you can be wrong.
Yes.
Understanding that you can make a mistake and understanding that it's okay to make mistakes.
Amen to that. All right, I think we jointly answered that question together.
We started saying words at the same time. Now we're answering questions in sync.
How do you think trust can be rebuilt in a relationship once it's been broken?
the person that was on the receiving end of the action, they have to be the one to be willing to accept it. Because most humans, if they care about that situation, are sorry. They feel sorry. That doesn't mean that they're going to act on that feeling, but they feel sorry. And if they do act on that feeling, it means nothing if that other person isn't willing to receive the steps that goes towards mending that situation. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily have to be cheating. Mm-hmm. It can be lying. It can be deceit. Mm-hmm. It can be pride. But that person has to receive what that other person that made that mistake is trying to give. And if those two can come up with a plan on what that looks like, emotions aside can come up with a plan, and then they can stick to that, I think there can be a process of recovery. Mm-hmm. But the person receiving has to be able to accept is a possible outcome of togetherness.
I think another key in order to move forward is forgiveness. And forgiveness looks like, I'm actually not going to hold this over your head for the rest of our relationship. Like if this is something that I'm choosing to move forward, like past with you, and we're doing this together and we're going to work on this together, and we have come up with a plan, you cannot hold that against them for the rest of you know, it's just that will always be a roadblock in a relationship from progression and from moving forward.
And also the person who committed that act needs to forgive themselves.
Right. Ooh, yes.
Yes.
That's a good one too. Also, I think that whoever was the one that to break that breach of trust needs to humble themselves, not just say, I'm sorry, but actually be willing to meet the needs of that other person, and whatever that may look like, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Like, even if the things that they're asking for might not be in your comfort zone, it's like, okay, well, these are the repercussions, right? If you want it to work, these are the repercussions of my poor decision making, or my poor choices, or my poor actions.
Yes.
And so being willing to compromise that comfort zone in order to make someone else feel like we're rebuilding, then that's important too.
But it starts with understanding that there's a possibility for that mend.
100%.
Because if you're just like, don't waste your time.
Yep.
If the person that broke that line of trust, if they're truly not going to continue on what was agreed upon, then there's no point. Yep. And if that other person is truly not willing to forgive, not forget, that whole forgive and forget thing is ridiculous to me. Yeah. But if that other person is not actually willing to forgive, then part ways. Because I'm an advocate in there is no perfect relationship. Because
there's no perfect people, guys. There's no perfect people.
Right. There is no perfect relationship. There's no perfect person for another person. You can say it to prove a point, to get your understanding, but there is no actual, like, literal perfect relationship. There are a bunch of people out there that you can decide to be compatible with, and there are a bunch of people who you can decide not to be compatible with. Because really what it takes is, like, you meet someone new and they say the things in that moment that resonate with you in that point in time. And then that can happen consistently. You're like, wow, I think I love this person. And that elation is knocked down when you get to know that person is not that perfect being. And does it come down too far? And if it comes down too far, then you realize that it's not worth it. But typically, if you can get high enough, those things won't matter as much.
All right. Next, do you feel it is okay to go through your partner's phone without permission?
No.
You answered before I even finished the question.
No, I made that mistake. I'm not going to say I am happy that it happened, but it was a real weird situation where, like, things were rocky and she started being real, like, outwardly weird with her phone. Like, I would walk by and she would, like, put her phone completely to her chest, or, like, not even putting the phone face down thing. That's menial to me. But it would be like someone would call and, like, she wouldn't answer it, and then there started being a whole bunch of numbers that, like, weren't saved. And I know what type of person she is. There's a reason why we do things. So unsaved numbers it happens, but on a consistent basis, not her. And I went to her graduation, and while she was in the shower, it was like 1:30 in the morning, and random call came, number unsaved. I was like, that's weird. But me being me, I was like, it's what, like, I'm not really the jealous type. I was like, it is what it is. And then it hung up and it called back again. And I was like, that's weird. Hung up again, called back. And I was like, that got to be just a drunk friend at that point. Like my mind went to like, that's somebody drunk. That's like, come save me, because she is that type of person. And when she got out, I was like, somebody called you like 3 times. She was like, oh, who was it? And I was like, I don't know. The number wasn't saved. And they were like, maybe it was just like a mistake. And I was like, but I let it slide. And then the next day, the same number, well, it had the same area code. And I was like, maybe that's the same number. I don't know. But we were in the kitchen at the time. We were looking at directions to like make some type of dish. And it came up and I was like, somebody's calling you. And then she was like, oh, she said, oh, it's my best friend. I'm not going to say the best friend. She said, oh, it's my best friend. And I was like, why is the number not saved? Oh, she got a new number. And I was like, okay. But then I remembered where her best friend was from and where we lived at the current time. I thought it was fishy, but again, I was like, it is what it is. And I didn't look it up at that time where that area code was from. I had to think about it. I was about to say zip code again. Area code is from. And later on I did. And I realized that it was like a completely different state. Like completely different state from where we were and where her friend was also from. Yeah. So I was like, whatever. We kept cooking or baking, whatever. I don't know the difference, but baking is cooking, but whatever. So then this night is the night before her graduation. After we made that, I was going to hang out with some of my friends, and then I was going to come back and we were going to grab dinner with her parents. Late that night, the number is calling back again. It's later. It's like a little, like maybe like 2-ish. It calls, it hangs up. It calls, it hangs up. And I don't know if it's the same number because I wasn't paying attention. But then third call happens and it's whoever that person was. And I'm like, all right, that's awkward. So then the fourth time, I actually go to answer it. I'm not paying attention enough. The phone's just lighting up. I actually go to answer it. They hung up before I got a chance to answer it. I'm like, all right, it's Bree. I could probably answer it if they like someone needs help. As I pick up the phone, it just opens. I don't know her passcode. I don't know how it opened, but it opened straight to Instagram. And that was where I learned how wild the DMs are. Wild. I'm not going to say everything that I read. I'm not going to say everything that I've seen, but it was a completely different person that I was dating in those DMs. It was bananas in there. It was wild, like a time. But me being me, I didn't want to ruin her graduation, but I was hurt. I didn't want to ruin her graduation. Graduation happened. I'm an actor. I put on an act. Some of it leaked through, I'll be honest. Packed up her apartment, moved her back to the crib, went from the crib to my spot in LA. From her spot in where she grew up in California to my spot in LA. And then she flew from my spot to go see some family as like a celebration. And then came back to my spot. Her car was at my apartment for like 12 days while she was visiting her family. And then I broke the news. So I sat on it for a while. I didn't want to ruin her graduation, which is, again, I don't really act out of spite. I don't want someone else to, like, her life to be ruined because she had a lot of human moments. And I know I'm going to catch a lot of backlash for that. I know. Let me have it. I will take that one. I went through her phone and I feel horrible for invading her privacy.
So you'll never do it again. That's your...
I won't say I never do it again, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it. What about you? Story time.
No. I don't want to go into story time. But I did just mention the other person that had my ex that had a double life. The way I found out was because I did go through his phone. But...
That's it?
To say that I feel it's okay to do it, I don't know. Would you do it to someone that you trust? No, probably not. But I mean, if they're... Had I not, though, what if I would have married him? Like, I think about that and I'm like, man, like that would have been...
Yeah, that would have been tough.
That would have been real hard. So I'm not going to say like, oh, anytime if I find an open phone, I'm just going to go through it.
What
No.
do you do?
Like,
What do you, actually, this might come up later. I'm not going to ask the question.
Okay, great. So yeah, you know what? We're just going to keep moving along on this one. Oh, I will say this though. When I'm married, like we're not having phone passwords. I don't think that I'm just going to throw that out there. I mean, or at least I should know you should know mine. Like,
well, since we continue, and if you're married and that happens and you find out he has a double life, do you stay together?
That's a whole different question. We're not going to answer that right now. We're just sticking to the actual question. Like when you're married, like there should be no secrets and there shouldn't be like, I don't think for me,
She said, Montez, have a seat. She said, calm down. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Next question. You go to your significant other's home and you notice an item of clothing of the opposite sex that is not yours. Do you ask about it or not?
Yes. What the I just watched like some type of player performance recently.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yes. What the yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
That's a yes for me too, folks.
That's.
You see, like.
All right. If somebody answers no, or you know somebody that answers no, please send them my way. I want to know that perspective.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, I want to understand your emotional decision behind it or your logical decision, or the combination of the two, because what?
How do you handle situations where trust is being tested?
I would have to think of a specific example where trust is being tested, but we gonna continue to test to see if we gonna get a 95 or a 5. Like, what are we talking about? We gonna continue to test. Big thing about me, I don't like to be confused. If I know, and I know how to act. I know how to react when it happens again if I decide to stay in that situation. But if it's being tested, that means it's still happening. We're gonna let it play out so I can understand.
We're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to talk about it so that we can see why the trust is being tested. Like, what is the...
I think I would need an example for me to answer it more directly, because I don't like giving very vague answers. I'm going to give a pinpoint thing, but that is my answer.
Okay.
Next question.
What are some communication strategies that you use to address trust issues in a relationship? I don't know. There's different ways of some communication strategies that maybe you use that work when you're trying to
outside of listening
trust issues. Well, maybe like validating their feelings.
No,
I'm
not validating anybody's,
or acknowledging their side, showing empathy. That kind
empathy,
of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not validating anybody's feelings, because just because you feel your feelings doesn't mean your feelings are
valid.
Valid. Yeah. Right. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Like one of them I've heard that I think is a good one is like putting it in a way like, I feel this type of way when this happens, or XYZ. But instead of like accusatory language, would be like, you'd be doing this and you that, like when you're putting it all on that person, versus like, I feel that da 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 da. That's more of an open way of conversating. Okay. That's a strategy, like not just going straight into like,
okay, yes,
you did this, you did that.
I was thinking something that I wouldn't already be doing, I guess, because like, I just want to give a basic example. Someone says that they're going to do something, and I take them at their word. The trust is broken when you decided not to do, not you, but you decided not to do that thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to communicate that like that's either not going to happen again, and if it happens again, I won't rely on you for whatever that thing is, because that happens often in my family. Like people say they're going to do things and they just don't follow through with it. But like I learned my lesson. I don't rely on people. Like one thing that annoys the heck out of me, and I should have mentioned this, is pet peeves, and it's probably come up on this podcast a lot with me, is time. When people say I will meet you somewhere at a specific time, and they pick the time, what are we talking about? And you show up late, bro, that doesn't make any, you pick the time. You literally pick the time. Why? Not you specifically, but why would anybody do that? And I know it's a big LA thing. It's a big Islander thing, is like, we're going to be late. Like, no. I value my time. If you don't value my time, we shouldn't be sharing time. That's pretty much how I see it. And with that type of thing, I'm going to let it be known that that's how I would communicate. Would be exactly how I just said it. I wouldn't be as aggressive, but like, no, it's not going to happen again. Of course, you get it. Like, we'll have second opportunities to make this thing happen. But if somebody keeps canceling on me, or if somebody is like has an excuse of like I'm tired or something like that consistently, it's not gonna work for me. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna work for me. And it's communication. Like like just having the conversation is good for me. But like I'm not the one to just keep letting it happen. But I will give them another opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you talked about too, listening, like active listening, actually paying attention to what they're saying, and like that's a huge part of communication, good communication. Also, I think establishing boundaries is a good one too, so that those type of things don't continue to happen.
Yeah.
So when you do this, like this is the boundary I'm setting. If this is how you're going to continue to act, then like this is how I'm going to respond to that. You're not going to get my time if you don't value it. Like this isn't going to work.
Right.
And then also like, I think with the communication too, like just problem solving together is the main thing.
Yes. Learning from your own mistakes is.
Yeah. All right. Well, that ends it, folks.
I actually don't think I answered that question because I don't understand that question, but yeah.
I think you did.
You
did it in your own way. It's all good. Okay. Our next session is going to be on breakups and who is wrong, like which side are you on type of thing. So we're going to have some different scenarios, and it's going to be...
Oh, shit. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of opinions.
It will be. So tune in for that next week, y'all. And we will see you then. Thanks for joining us.